All right, welcome to the July 30th, 2024 LTS Working Group meeting. I think we have a smaller group and a shorter agenda. I think everyone on the call has been here before. I don't see any new faces, but I think we'll probably just jump right in. Mo had a doc that he sent out a month or so ago. It's been a while. There were some comments on, and wanted to give him time to kind of talk through that and talk through some of the comment threads and just have some discussion around that. So, Mo,
Do you want to make it so he can share?
Yes, I do. I think you can share now.
Okay, give me 1 second. I gotta open like a new window that doesn't leak all my current existing windows.
You are a little bit quiet, Mo.
Sorry, I might have just been mumbling. Am I better now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm tired.
You're a little bit quiet. Yes. Yes, I am.
All right, let's see. Okay, can y'all see the doc?
Yes. If you
Yes.
make it a little bit less wide, it might zoom a little better.
Okay.
The window.
Let's do that. I gotta turn off my window manager. And I'll get rid of the sidebar.
You could probably get rid of the outline.
I need that.
Yeah, that's better. That's good. All right.
Cool. So let's see. It might have actually been like 2 months ago that I actually wrote this doc.
May. Yeah.
You still seem really quiet, FYI. I don't know if your audio is being picked up from a different place or you need to move a mic or I don't know.
How about now? Is that better? I'm using this. I only have one mic, which is the max mic.
It's workable. We can hear you. It's
Yeah,
fine.
we can hear you.
I'll just yell. Okay, so it was a while ago that I proposed this doc. I think a variety of folks have looked at it based on the comments. I spent some time this morning going through the comments and either uh, responding in some way, shape, or form, or trying to update the doc with some part of the details. Um, maybe maybe we can go through the comments. Is that what folks want to do? Or if folks have general things about the doc they want to chat about, we can do that as well.
We start with the comments, and if people want to jump in with questions about what's scrolling by, that's totally fine too.
Okay. So let's see. First comment was you, Bridget, about who I guess would own the cap. I see Ben saw some of my comments and started commenting. Maybe we should ping him and tell him to join. He literally commented 2 minutes ago. We should just tell him to join the meeting. He's a
Yeah.
really busy person.
We don't have to wait.
Okay. So let's see. I don't. Any sig won't be a stakeholder due to even though. Yeah, I mean that is true. I don't know if that really changes the fact that the KEP should be owned by at least a SIG. Participating SIGs can be star if we really want to be.
Yeah, like supporting a miner longer puts work potentially onto every SIG.
Yes.
So every SIG now has to keep up with dependencies and review backports and do backports and adapt backports potentially for the new miners that are in scope. And so I think it's more than just like an FYI. It's like, do you it's a similar discussion to when we were doing like the expanded node control plane skew. It was like going to every SIG and looking at all their features and like what plans have you made based on these miners going out of support or this supported skew, and how would like being on the hook for these miners longer impact you? Like, can you absorb that? Is that not a big deal for you? Is that a big deal? Do you act the additional work and commitment, basically?
Right. So how would we capture that? Would we ask at least like one lead from every relevant SIG to directly sign off on the KEP?
That's what we did with the expanded node skew kept. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So I
And
we can
that one was a little easier because it was scoped to components on the node. So it was like networking and cluster lifecycle and storage and like the end node, obviously. Folks that run code on the nodes that's impacted by the skew. Here, it's like, do you run code? Will there be security fixes? You're in scope.
yeah, maybe we could do something clever in the enhancements repo by like creating a link to this KEP in every single SIGs folder, which will cause every SIG lead to be tagged.
Yeah, I mean,
Force them.
however we do it, both communication and discoverability. Yeah,
That's fair though. I don't think that's unreasonable. Um, let's see. Jeremy's not here. Can we clarify that if this rule will be dependent on additional forks from downstream? And then Marco responded with that we can't rely on downstream forks, so we got to figure out, like, I guess fair. I wasn't really sure what to do with this thread because I understand what Jeremy's saying, which is that someone has to help. And certainly, I know people that would help, but at the same time, people do leave companies and all that jazz, so it changes. So I'm not exactly sure what to do with this thread.
Marco's on the call. Perhaps he wants to clarify or
I-
add.
Yeah, I can clarify it a little bit. Hope you can hear me well, but the thing is, uh, I would personally like to see that the community is able to maintain these because if we provide some promises to the community, let's say we will support the release for 24 months, and the downstream folks, people change the companies, change the teams. That stuff happens all the time, and now suddenly nobody does it for the upstream Kubernetes, then we can't really keep up to the promise. And then people will complain, and there will be a bit problematic situation how to handle that. And say something we might or might not provide that support is a little bit strange to say to the end user community. So personally, the only way I see this working is that initially it's fine, but if downstream folks are doing that, but I believe that the community should be trained to be able to do that because we need to make it sustainable. Otherwise, it's not something that we can put as a policy then, from my point of view.
yeah. There's a spectrum, I think. Like on the one hand, it would be our current position, which is after this date, the minor branch is locked. Like we don't accept changes. If you try to open a change, we will say nope, it's end of life, and we'll close the pull request. The far other end of the spectrum would be we, the open source community, promise to support this minor with all security fixes for this many more months. And in the middle, you sort of have, things that aren't at either extreme. So one might be we'll do best effort support. If the risk is low and the change is reasonable and the backport isn't too tangled, like if it's reasonable, we'll backport security fixes. That might be one possibility. Another possibility might be we will accept contributions of security fixes so that people, maybe like the downstream folks, maybe like folks in the community who are saying, oh, there's a vulnerability, we can bump this dependency, we'll make the contribution. And the open source posture would be, we'll accept a security fix if you bring it. So I think sort of calling out all of those possibilities, saying right now we're at one end of the spectrum where we say the date has passed, all PRs get auto closed. And sort of saying here's all the possibilities. What can we commit to? What should we commit to? I think and we'll get to this. There's a later comment about like we have to evaluate risk, and like not every security fix might be able to be backported, and so making a hard promise that we will probably isn't great. I think the most we could promise is like we'll do it if it's feasible. And Marco, your concern about like who's going to staff this is a really good concern, and so maybe the posture should be we will accept contributions that fix security issues in release branches, and then like we can either staff it from within the community or downstreams who are already doing a lot of this work have a place to contribute those changes to. That's also another possibility.
Yeah, this is very well said. Sorry, did I interrupt anyone?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, this is very well said. Maybe we could do the best effort route so that we say, okay, we will try. If you provide a fix, we will think about it. I think the biggest risk out there is actually teaching the community, the reviewers and approvers to reason about if this is something that can be safely merged, because this is not only that someone provided a fix, this is nice, but we have as a community to judge if that's okay. And I think this is where the biggest risk is going to come from. So we will have to figure that out eventually.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really different about that is right now, if, Google ships some patch to kubeproxy and it's weird and doesn't actually necessarily make sense, it's not endorsed by SIG Network and it isn't part of the official upstream. And that also means the rest of the ecosystem isn't necessarily expected to support it. If we're shipping patches upstream, then I think the people who are reviewing them downstream is a nice start, but you still kind of need all of the owning SIGs for the components to be vetting these changes. Otherwise, you're asking them to say, we're officially shipping patches to components you haven't reviewed.
This isn't proposing any change to our normal processes. It's just saying who does the work to like kick off the security fix in the master branch and then pick it back. Like, yes, it would absolutely need to be reviewed by upstream owners,
right?
Backport approvers, the same as all changes today.
But that's not something that they currently have to do for, as far back.
Yeah.
Context is getting more stale and
comment, which was like all SIGs have to act the work to at least review more backports to more miners.
Yeah, I would add to that. It's also, maybe smaller, but it's all of the other aspects of having older branches. Like, SIG release automatically forks the jobs, but all of the rest of the community is still on the hook for like, the scale test broke or whatever. Unit tests are flaking, that sort of thing. And like there's just like everything that we do about a release branch involves the whole project pretty much. So I think, they're all invested parties in this, and we should be really clear about like, what's the cost benefit here and what's the right time frame to target and why. I think that's the biggest gap that I see right now. I'm sure Mo's put a lot of thought into this, but the 2 years right now reads as fairly arbitrary. I think that kind of thing needs a lot more fleshing out before we ask not just the Kubernetes project, but the whole ecosystem to accept that like this is the standard now and you need to support more versions of Kubernetes longer, which can also be really hard given the way we maintain things like the staging libraries with our SKU support. It's now potentially projects that could just support a couple versions of Kubernetes within the SKU bounds might need to actually start maintaining different branches where they have different client Go versions and that sort of thing that they're probably not doing today.
Yeah, I think the last comment in the doc, we were asking about how this would impact SKU support or not. And this is not actually proposing changing any of the supported SKU versions. It's just saying security patch old miners and leave SKU support in place. And that actually undoes some of the things we've tried to do with the open source support policies, where the oldest node supported by open source is like that's within SKU of the newest control plane within open source. Like that we just put that in place last year, and this is like, oh, but actually we're going to security patch older stuff but not expand SKU support there.
And that
which-
also extends past us, right?
Like that's a reasonable, like minimal thing to do, but it kind of undoes like improvements we made in other places.
And it isn't just affecting the core, it also affects like, all the ingress controllers and that sort of thing, where right now it's fairly reasonable to target supported Kubernetes. I mean, also our own testing apparatus, for example, like Kind has a controller. It just uses a vaguely recent client Go version, and that's pretty fine. That sort of thing is going to become less fine if we need to start targeting much older branches for testing. We're going to have to figure out a way that we can make that work. Right now, we don't have branches and versions. And I think there's a lot of ecosystem components this way where they just kind of work for the recent supported versions. And if you want to support longer, that's outside of like SKU bounds for client Go and the API and things, then now they have to take on a version branch model.
Yeah. I want to let Mo actually make progress through his doc in the comments. But yes, the project impact on like testing configuration, well, not just what SIG release and SIG testing clone per miner, but other things that integrate, and the ecosystem impact on having the official project statement be like, yep, instead of 3 to 4 miners, it's now 6 to 7 miners. All right, sorry, Mo, go ahead.
No, it's a good discussion. Let's see. So I'm trying to remember how far I got down. I really hate Google Comments. Because they just make it impossible to keep track of where you were.
I had a brilliant insight that was too large to fit in the margin.
I know. It's just like, what are you doing? Let's see. No, where were we? I think we were we were here. This was a good grief. Okay, so I think next comment was this one. I think it was asked, where did I come up with 2 years? So I came up with 2 years from the perspective of, if it takes me a year to figure out how to upgrade myself and get it all certified, then I get a year to use it. That's where that came from. It wasn't arbitrary. It was basically the minimum increase that helped, that wasn't stupidly long, like 5 years or some insanity. That's where the 2 years came from.
I would just spell that out a bit in the proposal, so that, when people are asking, why do I have to do this? We have some reasoning. And so it doesn't appear like we're just kind of like copying from what the cloud vendors have settled on. I assume we've done that work, but we should make sure that it shows through into the proposal, so that like when we go tell all of these projects, hey, we want to support things longer, here's how much longer and why.
Is a year to certify an upgrade actually plausible? Like if it takes you a year to certify an upgrade, what are you envisioning? People who are upgrading in place, or like new clusters? Because just the cadence of a release means that if they're taking a year to certify an upgrade, I don't see how that actually works.
They're always behind. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, they are.
Well, not just
Yeah.
behind, but like not keeping up. Not like if they were behind and like at a fixed interval, like okay, but if it takes you a year to certify an upgrade and there's a release every 4 months, like that math doesn't work.
And this is the part where we say, we got to get to skip version upgrades eventually, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that is very, very typical from all of our large enterprise customers. Takes them about 9 months to do the actual work. They have about 3 months worth of network freezes around important times of year, that sort of stuff. And that time frame is the minimal that they're usually asking for, because it takes them that long. They want to be able to run it for a year.
and they do that 3 times a year now?
No, they do it once a
Okay.
year.
Okay, so
skips is the other. Yeah, they're falling further behind.
yeah, so if this by itself is not sufficient and also requires skip upgrades to be sufficient, is it a good thing to put more effort here and get even older clusters if doing skip upgrades is actually also required and would let people do things once a year without getting 2 years old?
I mean, at
I
least with
don't
this
feel like I'm
way,
expressing
you
it very
can,
well, but go
at
ahead.
least this way you can have migrations once a year if you're willing to do that.
You're muted, Micah. I see you talking, but you're muted.
Sorry, I was talking off camera.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the costs to like officially saying 6 to 7 minor versions are supported by upstream is like, it has costs we know about for the project. It has costs we know about for the ecosystem. I think we are underestimating the costs to the ecosystem. And if the real goal is I want to upgrade my cluster once a year and I need X number of months to qualify that, like, I'm not sure that support 2 years of minor versions is the right way to enable that, or is the cheapest way to enable that, given the cost that it imposes on the project and the ecosystem.
I don't think skip, like, unless we're gonna skip 6 versions, I don't think you get what you need. I think you need both. That's why none of this is trying to say that we don't need the skip versions.
Yeah.
I think you actually need both. I don't think the need for the other thing removes the need for this thing.
Well, doesn't it though? Because if we do this and we don't do the skip version work, then we haven't actually helped those users that take a year to vet, right?
If they're not, if they're willing to migrate instead of upgrade, then they're fine. They just have to vet the new version, right? It's not just purely can I like upgrade, it's can I certify the environment.
Yeah, but do users migrate? I thought most, like, some do, certainly, and those are our favorite users. We love those users. I thought the survey data that we had gathered showed that most people upgrade, like in place upgrade.
And I think that we discovered that a lot of people do that in-place upgrade because they either can't get or can't afford the capacity to just have, a second system. Like that's not feasible. So they have to upgrade the thing they have, whether it be in their data center or their cloud estates.
But to certify a new version, you do have to have new infra. You can't certify it on your prod. That wouldn't work, right? Like it has to both exist, has to run somewhere, and then you got to go test it. So there has to be some inherent cost, right? The certification isn't free.
Yeah, I just want to be super clear about, like, what user segment are we actually helping with 2 years of support without skip upgrade? And I think it's users who are taking a long time to certify and replacing clusters instead of upgrading. And
there can also be users of a different type, right? Which just are very happy with the current feature set and just need CVE fixes to keep client, and then they'll upgrade when it's convenient, but it is no longer necessary for them to upgrade for features. That makes sense?
I am not sure about that. Like, if customers who are able to upgrade and they're just trying to pick a convenient time, like, surely there's a time once a year that is okay for them to upgrade.
No, surely in the sense of, sure, they could, but if there isn't any need because they don't actually get anything from the upgrade other than CVE fixes, right? That's what I mean. Like basically, they only can get regressions and CVE fixes, so they're fine. They're like, I'll eat the regressions possibly, but at least I get CVE fixes, right?
So in customers like that, are you envisioning them wanting to upgrade less than once a year? Like I'd
Like-
stick on a miner for years and then upgrade a bunch of times.
Maybe, I don't know.
Or it could be ephemeral. Like it could be, I want to keep I have compliance reasons that I need to patch, but I don't need this cluster after 2 years because it's in an appliance that gets thrown away or that gets reset or whatever.
Yeah, I can certainly envision, very specific scenarios where it works. I'm just trying to understand how broad are those scenarios, like for the costs that are incurred by the project and the costs that are pushed onto the ecosystem. Like
I
it
guess
seems
let
like
me ask-
narrower and narrower use
let me ask
cases
the inverse
that are
question. Why are very long LTSs useful for like Ubuntu? Right? My guess is that the system is feature complete and it just needs to work and be security safe, right?
right, but 2 years is not very long. Like
I mean, it's
the
a lot longer than 1
for
year.
5 years, 10 years, like yeah, then it makes sense for it to be in an appliance. And it's like, yep, the expected life of this product is whatever, 5 years, 10 years.
Mhm.
Like it lines up. 2 years is still short enough that you have to deal with like upgrade and end of life sort of imminently. Either you're gonna just delete the cluster, like Micah said, it's ephemeral, or you're gonna upgrade it somehow.
Right.
Like 2 years is not long enough to just sort of let something sail off into the sunset. And so like it's this weird awkward point where it's long enough that it's a pain to maintain, but not long enough that it actually is a thing you can just sort of forget about.
I mean, but I don't think any of us can reasonably propose, let's do 5 years, right? So we have to start somewhere.
I don't know that we do. Like
So let me back up for a second because I think we brought up the ecosystem thing a few times, right?
Yeah.
I think the ecosystem is going to feel this pain no matter what now because every cloud vendor has created their own LTS, and so now that is the vast majority of usage of Cube is through the cloud vendors because it's the only easy way.
And I don't think there's a good answer for them today. And so when there's not a good answer for them today, the central project saying, "Yep, we officially make this an official problem you all have." Like it seems like that's worse.
So I'll take the example of Cert Manager, right? Cert Manager maintains incredibly old code to support really old versions of OpenShift.
Sure, but like most projects don't do that. Also, I don't think our survey data actually shows there's a difference between most clusters are on cloud and most clusters are using managed vendor distros. There's a lot of clusters on cloud, on certain clouds that are using other options for running the cluster, and they're not actually using like the vendor provided distro. But even if there are, right, it's a lot easier for me as a maintainer of, I don't know, Ingress Nginx to just say, yeah, GKE's LTS thing, like I'm not dealing with that. Good luck. Go get a paid solution for this. Versus if the Kubernetes project itself is announcing this. I think that's really different, and I haven't actually seen evidence that any open source projects are changing. Like your example of Cert Manager, that project has been doing it for a long time, but OpenShift has had that LTS for a long time, and most projects don't seem to maintain this. Most projects seem to target like current Kubernetes versions.
I mean, I think the ideal thing that most projects target is it doesn't matter what Kubernetes version you have, the project is mostly fine. Like it's not reliant on some arbitrary fixed point in time, right? That's sort of the ideal scenario because otherwise you have to figure out, does it still work or did it stop working or whatever?
Well, I mean, like very specific example, like Gateway API has CRDs that they have a lot of their validation use cases have filtered into what we're adding in CRD cell validation and validating emission policy so that projects like Gateway API can stop maintaining emission webhooks. And so Gateway API, I think, supports 5 miners. It's like all the ones open source does plus one more for good measure. And so they're already sort of going above and beyond, and it's already biting them where they can't take advantage of the improvements in cell validation and validating emission policy to stop running emission webhooks until those trickle back into like the most recent 5 miners, right? And so, yes, ideally it wouldn't matter what version of Cube you're running on, unless you're doing more than just sort of bare bones, like here's my schema, here's my CRD, I'm using config maps and pods and deployments, like whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm using a very small subset. If you're actually sort of using the features that Cube provides, every new improvement that we add takes a year-ish before a project that's trying to support all the supported miners can make use of it. And if we go to 2 years, then it's 2-ish years. That's like an incredible velocity killer. So it does impact those projects. It's already impacting Gateway.
Yeah, but I think a project like Gateway API needs to just tolerate those things, because in a sense, I don't think they should be trying to adopt those features.
If our own projects can't, who is?
No, I mean, like I have written projects that have very complex CRDs and very complex controllers, and they don't use any of this stuff because they support like Cube 110. Right?
Yeah, but that's your choice to support Cube 110. That's super, super outlier. Like almost nothing supports that far back.
No, the point was it wasn't really to support that old. It was to just keep working. It was like, yes, it would it be nice if you had all this validation and it happened immediately? Yeah. Can my controller just do it and give you a reasonable status? Also, yes. So like, it was a purposeful design choice to make it so that we weren't coupled with the bleeding edge of features.
Yeah, but you're saying that everyone else should just make that design choice, and that also the teams that are like working on providing these new features shouldn't bother because you're never going to adopt them. I don't think that's generally the stance of the project currently.
No, I mean, I think if your whole point is to be many releases, which Gateway API said 5, right? You've already taken the stance of I won't adopt anything bleeding edge because I can't. So maybe just don't try to.
Yeah, but it would be more than that right now. It'll be even worse.
I mean, at some point it just
We've got about 15. Technically, the meeting goes to 10:45. I don't know why this is a 45-minute meeting, actually. But let's try to jump to some of the other discussion threads just to make sure we give a chance for.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Marco. You said that it's technically 12 months of support and 2 months of maintenance mode.
Yeah, so I wanted to clarify because the official policy that we have in place right now is that full support is for the first 12 months, and then we have 2 months which are kind of security only, so only critical fixes. So I was wondering if you want to keep that in place, or if we are with this proposal changing that we have the full support like with everything for the 14 months, so 2 additional months than before.
I think actually the bar for backports has been creeping up appropriately, so that even during the normal 12 months, like we're really trying to only merge security fixes and regression fixes and critical fixes, just generally for the whole life of the backport. I don't know that we make a big distinction for the last 2 months. I think we're trying to just raise the bar for what qualifies for a backport the whole time.
I mean, I agree about that and let's say that in what we actually doing are matching what you said, so we didn't really make the decision, but I was thinking about the like adhering to the official policy, which I linked in the chat, like that has this covered. So if you like want, because it will be nice to eventually, if we are doing this stuff, update the official policy to be clear on that.
Yeah, I think Jeremy had an issue open to make the bar clearer, or like I think we already have the docs in place for this, but maybe there's a little confusion about how to apply it. But yeah, I agree. I also don't think it's super relevant to this proposal, but yeah.
Okay. I think what I heard is that we will retain maybe full support verbiage, but the meaning of full support is maybe more nuanced, because we are very careful with the backports we do, as probably it should be, because we saw Jordan's chart of regressions and had lots of regressions. Okay. No, I don't think we would address something in this particular doc. Let's see. I think rigid. We would clarify the meta category of is official or whatnot. Okay. Let me see. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is criteria for backport. So official CVE, which has this label, dependency of KK, if the CVE actually impacts Q. And I think one of the things, Jordan, you brought up, because I think munged them together, was Go version.
Mo, can you move your mic or something? I have my volume like all the way up,
Sorry.
and you're still really soft.
I don't know what's going on. I've literally only ever used the mic on my Mac. And
You're
I've
coming
never-
through clear now.
Okay. I mean, I'm just being, I'm
You have
really,
to protect.
so, let's see. Go version minor is that, I don't know, that has security fixes, right? That's basically what we want.
When you say minor, do you mean patch? Go
Yes.
calls their things weird things. They call minors majors and patches minors, but whatever.
Yeah, because they're never gonna leave one.
Yeah.
So the same with us, right? We're never
Same with
gonna.
us. Yeah. I would just say go version updates that have security fixes, because we, like, when a given Go version reaches end of life, we will update to the next major, minor, I don't know what to call it. The next Go version that is in support.
Yeah.
So just Go version updates.
That have security fixes. Yeah. So we wouldn't just do it for funds, like because Go got faster or something. That we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would probably just keep the process running. So like every Go patch that comes out, we're going to update to, because we do it across all our miners. Because like we're not going to look at like, oh, this one didn't have security content, so we're going to hold off on it, and then the next one maybe will, so we will update to it. Like I think we would just keep the pipeline running. Like we absorb patch releases normally.
Okay, so maybe
I would just say Go version updates.
Speaking of Go updates, in the interest of us not running out of time, Jordan, do you want to just quickly tell us about the Go 1.23
Oh yeah, I've
compatibility mode
talked about
improvements?
Yeah, so Go had compatibility version where they keep runtime compatibility with previous behavior. That was great. It landed in 121. They unfortunately coupled it to a directive that will get auto bumped if your dependencies update their Go version. And so the thing that we were counting on to stick on an older Go version and say like use the runtime compatibility settings was getting forced to a newer Go version. So they added a new directive in Go 123 that will let you say,
I really mean what I really meant
like,
already.
For the compatibility switch stuff, use this Go version. So that's coming in Go 123, which it looks like we will just miss for our 131 release. So we'll pick that up for Kubernetes 132, and in January, I guess we'll take Go 123 back to our release branches, and we can start using that.
Just a quick question, Jordan. Is it just like another line in the Go mod file? Like we have to add a new one?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's Go debug default equals Go 120 whatever.
Okay.
So when we bump Go minor versions in master, we will update that line. So it'll say, and then that'll just sort of sail off into the sunset in the release branches and never change.
Okay. So we would be updating the Go mod version still, but not the Go debug version?
If the Go mod version we won't proactively update it. If we have a dependency that we have to consume an update for because of a vulnerability, and that dependency had bumped its Go version, that will transitively bump ours. But with this new directive, once we get to Go 123, that won't impact the runtime compatibility switches.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's actually a third version. There's the toolchain version. There's the stated version of the module, and then now
And-
there's this compat version,
Well-
and it will be updated as appropriate.
Wait, is the toolchain version also in the Go mod, or is that like implicit?
It can be.
It can be. We're not yet. Sorry.
Yeah. We will build with new Go versions. We will keep compatibility switches using the original Go version for the miner.
Go used to be such a simple language. Now there's switches.
Then reality intervened.
It's fine. All right.
All right.
I'll stop complaining. Okay, so I think this one was one that you wanted to talk about, Jordan, which is, yeah, I wrote this statement in a very strong wording, mostly because I was real nervous about trying to come up with criteria for this CVE is not good enough.
Yeah, I think if there is any CVE, then it's eligible for backport. The question, but it's not just without any regard to the risk of the backport. So
Right.
this is that spectrum I was talking about before. Like, I don't think we can say we promise we will always backport every fix for every CVE, regardless of like feasibility or risk or complexity, right? And so saying like it's legitimate to open a pull request saying like this dependency has a CVE, it's a low, but here's the bump that fixes it. Like we wouldn't just say, oh no, it's low, we're going to close the PR without even looking at it. But if the PR like changes 100 dependencies and it's a million lines of changed code, like we might say this is a low CVE, it's a real CVE, but the risk of this is super high. Like, and so I don't think we can say it has no bearing on it.
Okay.
So I don't know how to phrase that, but
Yeah, so I get what you mean. So I think if it's a higher critical, I think we would just do it because it's a high, probably.
we would be willing to accept a higher risk fix for a
Right.
higher critical CVE. The risk is still relevant, I think.
Maybe we just need like a table of
Yeah.
like if your CVS is this, we will
And
do
this is where it gets into like area specific stuff, right? Like each SIG has different areas. Like some of the storage stuff, some of the Windows stuff is super twisty, and it's like
Windows.
we know there's a vulnerability. The fix for it, we're not sure if it will regress someone or break someone. So what do we do there? Maybe we do the fix, but with an escape hatch in case you get broken. Like there's various things we can do, but it kind of has to be case by case review.
Yeah.
So if this is saying we will, instead of auto closing changes to old release branches because they're past DOL, we will now consider the changes. We'll only consider it if it's fixing a real CVE or bumping a Go version, I guess. And in our consideration, we'll look at the severity of the issue it's fixing and the risk of the change that resolves it. Normal backport review stuff.
Yeah, I think on these, the vector is actually really important, right? It's a problem. It's a problem sitting on disk, not utilized in any way. So the method's not called or whatever, right? And that vector makes it not worth the risk to make any changes. Right.
Yeah.
Are
I mean,
you
that
actually
sort of
using?
gets like, is it actually impacting Kubernetes, right? Like there's
Right.
some CVEs where it's like at build time, there's a thing you can do with malicious source code. It's like that doesn't really apply to Kubernetes. Like the source code is not malicious; it's auditable. We don't use build with uncontrolled source, so that CVE doesn't apply. Or there's a CVE in the dependency, but it's in a package that we don't even link in or vendor. Like that doesn't apply.
Yeah, so I think those ones are really clear. It's more about like, oh, here's a storage bug that could cause like data corruption or writes by an unauthorized actor into some place. And we think there's like a 50% chance that all the storage will break on your cluster if we make this change because we're like rewriting it or something.
There's also just the issue of having enough bandwidth to implement the change, because in some cases we've done things like we switch to endpoint slices or whatever in the like current version of the component, and then now you have to like totally rewrite the change for the older one. I think if it's a low risk CVE and you have to like completely redesign the patch, the SIG may not really step
Yeah.
up for that.
So those are like the two middle parts in the spectrum. Like, we commit to doing the backport if it's feasible, or we will accept contributions of backports if they're fixing real CVEs. And so, like, one sort of puts the burden on the community to staff the work. The other, I mean, there's still a burden to like review, right? But that's more of an invitation for like downstreams that are today maintaining their own branches. Like, if you want to like push your security fixes upstream, like by policy, we can actually review and accept them now.
I just meant that it seems like from what you're saying, we will want to consider the severity of the patch or of the vulnerability when we're looking at particularly thorny patches, like not even just large dependency changes, like core code changes that are not straightforward to review and like that sort of thing. Like it seems like the score is relevant. We're just not setting a hard threshold, but
So
we're also
like
not guaranteeing
feasibility,
that everything gets patched.
yeah, feasibility is a good way to refer to that. Like, when feasible, we'll backport security fixes that are available.
Yeah, so it's a
Um,
balance of feasibility and risk, I think is what we're getting at. And so I'll try to write something to describe that, and probably a table to.
Mo, if you want to scroll up a tiny bit, I made a tiny edit to, or a comment, on one, a little bit higher. A little bit higher.
Sorry.
But right there, the word for. I think that we could cover the issue of like backports to be considered for that time frame. Because that kind of gets us off the hook of we're definitely gonna do it. It's like
Yeah, and this is
something
a
like that.
doc. Like, this will turn into a
Oh,
real
no, of course. I'm just
work.
saying, like, I think that's the sort of language that would preserve the optionality that we've been discussing.
Yeah, that's a good tweak.
Makes sense. I like it. Okay. I think I still sort of stand beside this statement of nothing else with CVs. Like I know, so I think Ben, you had commented that downstream we're already doing like critical bug fixes and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to get into the definition of what is critical bug fix.
I understand that. I think there's a problem though where we're saying this is like a supported tested release and we know there's a big bug and like things don't work.
I mean, we already do that, right? Like, we'll say this is a long-standing bug. It's not a regression. It's fixed in new minors. The fix was involved.
Okay, well, but there's a
already-
great example. We backport a CVE fix and it introduces a regression. Now the fix is no longer a CVE fix, but it's still a bug fix. Are we going to reject those? I think there probably should be. I know there's like the slippery slope here, but I think it's going to be really difficult to announce we're supporting branches for longer and actually only ever merge CVE changes and nothing else.
I think we have to start there. If we try to make it bigger, we will spend all of our energy trying to argue if we have done the right thing instead of.
I'm saying you should probably start thinking about what those exceptions are now so we can have a less than arbitrary policy set. I don't think that rejecting every patch that is a bug fix is going to last, or that isn't a CVE fix is going to
fixing a
last.
regression in a patch release caused by backports newly accepted under this policy seem like something like this is creating a new issue. Let's at least leave the gate open wide enough to like fix a regression caused by a backport.
And I'm suggesting let's spell out that sort of thing so that when that discussion happens, we can already say this is a policy. Like, we're not fixing old regressions. We will fix new regressions or something and clear that out. I think a policy that just says it's not a CVE, we're not touching it, probably won't hold up to like once we start shipping these.
Yeah, so I think that's not really the case I'm concerned about. Yeah, if we broke it trying to fix a security thing, then I think we would just go fix it just as a
Well,
matter.
we would all, like, in the room here, we all agree, like, oh, of course, that would make sense. But when you go to open the PR, it's like there's no CVE attached to this fix, so close by policy. So we just want to make sure the policy is
Yeah, so I think that part's fine. I think more of like if you use component X on Cube and it, causes like, I don't know, horrible thrashing of your API server and like whatever, and it's really bad for like, I don't know, maybe it's like 50% of Cube environments is a really bad time.
No, we
I-
already avoid backports for things like that. I don't
Right.
think we'd have any trouble saying no to those things, and
But-
those aren't allowed by this policy, so that's fine.
But we won't want to be ad hoc deciding when PRs are filed because that opens up for pressure from outside the project to say, why won't you accept my patch? You accepted some other patch. So we should, outline pretty clearly that. So like, even if we agree, oh, this is reasonable carve out, then like put it in the plan. So we can tap the sign and say this is the patches we're accepting, and only these patches, and it is decided. Don't go bothering like release cherry pick approvers with your random regression fixes. We're not accepting them because we already get a lot of this. Like we spend a lot of time right now clearing up the issue tracker with someone filed a bug from like 6 releases ago. We're like, can you show me that it's valid with the current one? They don't respond. We close the bug. I think we're gonna do the same thing with the patches here. Also, I think that one isn't called out in costs. Like I think a bunch of SIGs, like I see this really commonly with kubelet stuff. They file a bug from what is currently an out of support branch, and you can just kind of say, well, this isn't supported. When we support for longer, it's going to increase that load. But I think we should just be really clear with our like reason policies that are going to hold up to reality.
If you have a release that's 2 years old and you say there's a bug in it, we would still close it as unsupported because unless the bug is a security thing, we're not going to fix it. So it's still unsupported.
Well, we already came up with one hypothetical where we will, so we should.
Well, sure, if you can
Yeah.
prove to us that we regressed you with a security fix, right? But in the normal sense, right, of like I think the biggest cost of SIGs would be reviewing and approving the changes.
Sure, but I'm saying that while we can agree that that sounds reasonable here, we should write it down so that you don't, so it's not an argument of like what does Mo think is reasonable. It's like this is what the KEP says.
Yeah.
For when someone else comes along that's not in this room and is like, I want my patch, you merge some
Actually,
other patch.
that leads me to a question. Would I assume we could point people to the KEP, but probably we would want to point people to something on the docs website. That's the
Yeah, we have a cherry pick policy. So the KEP is getting agreement on a change. The KEP is not like the policy. So we would update the cherry pick policy. We would update the support policy on the website. So the KEP is proposing the delta, like what are the change we want to make? What are the goals of the change? What are the costs of the change? Everyone agrees, yes, yes, yes. And the output of that is we update the user-facing docs and the project docs around cherry pick stuff and the release playbooks around approving cherry picks. And that's the output of the KEP.
The KEP is also a little bit of an output because it's where you can point to why. And we already discussed these things, and this is what we decided. Please don't make us relitigate these decisions.
We have
Okay,
2
time
minutes.
check. I'm sure other people also have other meetings that start in 2 minutes. So
Yep.
just make sure we're wrapping.
We can keep going on this the next time. I think there's probably more threads. Maybe if you want to iterate on some of the discussion from today, and we'll pick back up where we left off. This was useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. If we want to do it in 2 weeks, we can. If we lead longer, I have this as one of the. I forget. Did I submit it for Contributor Summit? I think for KubeCon. So I figured we'd keep talking and talk in person.
All right. Thank you. See you.
Well.